What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast, where we talk about all things pertaining to life on and off the fireground. The views and the opinions expressed are those of your host and our guest. Today we sit down with Stu Esh and Marcus Haynes, two great firefighters who back in 2009 had a small event that shaped and changed the way they think about their approach to tactics and their strategies and their understanding of fire dynamics in the world in which we operate. It's a great conversation. Please enjoy. Marcus and Stu, appreciate you guys sitting down with me to talk about the fire that you guys had and the burns that you suffered, Marcus, and the kind of the fallout of all of that and the things that you've learned and the experiences that you guys had. So why don't we start with just telling the audience, who you are, where you're at today, where you were at when this all started, when this event happened, that kind of stuff. Marcus?
Marcus Haynes. Work currently for the Phoenix Fire Department down at our downtown hazmat station. So I'm firefighter, paramedic, and hazmat technician. Been a firefighter for 18 years now, and I enjoy what I do.
I'm Stuart Esh. Work for Buckeye Fire. Been here my whole career. Started here in 2001. Deputy chief now, over emergency management, basically. Just kind of came up through the ranks here. So,
right on. So, well, let's talk about this fire. It went poorly and ended up in you, Marcus, getting burned. How long had you been on the job at that point, Marcus?
Maybe a little over 3 years.
About that, yeah.
Maybe a little over 3 years, something like that.
And were you a reserve at the time? I don't know that matters, but it may.
I was no. I reserved before getting hired full time here,
Okay.
but no, I wasn't reserve. I was full time.
Okay. And what were you doing at that time, Stu?
I was a captain. I think one thing to kind of help with this as far as the backstory, I had gotten promoted to captain early on in my career. Mm-hmm. So I was on 2 years. Just got out of medic school and was promoted. There was a lot of politics going on at the time. We won't get into that, but in my opinion, got promoted prematurely. Mm-hmm. So there was, I think, some that played into some of this was the lack of experience. So
at all levels.
Yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, tell me the story. How did it go down? Why don't we start with from the company officer's perspective? Because you guys pulled up, you had, you're responding to the call. What are you hearing? What are you learning? What do you know is going on this incident?
So the fire itself was in a trailer park that we knew about. I mean, we had pre-planned it quite a bit. We knew there was going to be water supply issues, and we had kind of planned ahead for that. So we had a booter on our truck, Aaron Webster, and he had to go get some gear. And so we sent him in the brush truck to go up to Resource to get his gear. So we were 3 man at the time.
Okay.
Marty Meese was the engineer, and him and I had discussion prior to this that if we had a fire in there and it was on the west side, that we would have to get the water supply from over the wall.
So let's talk about water supply a little bit. So it was standpipes, or was it just the plugs were outside the park?
The plugs were outside the park.
Copy.
The park had a wall and basically surrounding the property. Mm. And on the west side, the walls were a little bit lower, but on the other side of the wall were hydrants.
Okay.
And it was the only water supply that would be close. So that was our plan, was to get that water supply over the wall.
And what was the quality of those plugs?
Actually, they had decent water.
Pretty good? Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
They had pretty good pressure. So it would have.
So good pressure, just tough to get to.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've since put gates in those walls now. Oh. So now they do.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the call kicks out. We knew the trailer park, so we weren't sure what we were going to be rolling up on, but you could see smoke coming up, and so I remember it clearly. We're going down Monroe at about 4th Street. You could see the column, so I radioed for 2 tankers, just knowing that there could be water supply issues, and we turned to go into the trailer park, and it was just dead ahead.
So talk a little bit about the demographics of Buckeye at that time. This is 2009, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So talk about the demography of the city. the relationship with Buckeye Valley. You don't have to get too into the weeds, but what was the response package looking like? You called for tankers, but what were you expecting to get on scene?
A 3-in-1. At the time, we were automatic aid.
Okay.
So we were expecting, what any normal for the 3-in-1 would show up. Now we had to mutual aid with Buckeye Valley.
Okay.
And so I don't know if they were on automatic aid at the time. I don't think they were.
No, you had the special call.
Yeah. So I had a special call to tankers. And we didn't have any, obviously. So our relationship with them was fairly decent. I mean, it had been really bad years prior, but I think it was at a point where it was starting to settle down a little bit. Costello had come in as the chief, and so he had worked at Buckeye Valley, so there was a relationship there. So things had kind of settled down a little bit, so it wasn't as tumultuous as it was prior to. So the response was going to be a typical 3-in-1 response.
How about run times, response times?
So the response time was relatively quick. I mean, we were there 2.5 minutes, something like that.
Very quick.
So it was really quick. So turnout time and stuff like that, it was quick. So we had, like I said, we got there. Marty said that he would handle the water supply, and when we turned the corner and saw it, my thought was it was a fifth wheel RV. It wasn't even a full trailer, mobile home anyway. So my thought was we'll probably just open the door, hit it from the door, and knock it down, and then go in and do a quick search. And that was just my thought going in. Later, talked to Marty, and he had kind of the same idea. So that was the thought process going in. And so we pulled up. I had, in my on-scene report, said that we didn't have a water supply. We'd be making attempts to get it. And I got out. And about that time, Costello he was obviously the fire chief, and he had pulled up. And as I was putting my pack on, and so he took command of it. He was in a meeting right downtown at City Hall, and so he just came right over. So he had backed in. He had a pretty good spot for seeing everything, and he took command. He made me interior. So I put my pack on, radio back. I'll be interior. I come around the corner, and I saw the hose. It was laid out, and the nozzle was laying next to the door. Door was closed. So I started putting my mask on, and my thought is, well, maybe Marcus is doing a 360. That's just what I assumed, because I had no thought that he would be inside. So I was like, okay, I'm expecting him to come around the corner. So I get my mask on, and pulled my hood up, and just as I did that, I see the door pop open, and Marcus comes out on fire. Literally had flames on him. Okay.
Well, why don't you pause right there?
Okay.
So, Marcus, why don't you tell us about your thought process on the way to the fire, and tell the story from your perspective.
Well, I too was probably promoted to a senior firefighter too quick, right? But my arrogance or my ego got in the way, so I didn't feel that it was too quick. I felt like I was capable of being a senior firefighter. Be able to teach at the college, working with Stu here, working at Cabnesh, working with them for several years already. He had pretty good expectations, at least really strong expectations when it came down to my attitude, how we operate, what his boundaries were. So all that felt clear, right? I didn't ask any more questions beyond that, right? I kind of just operated and said, I got to meet these objectives. But mostly I operated off of the young mindset of being aggressive and just going after, right? Being aggressive, I got it. So there was a lot of ego that came into play on this particular response. We got there quick. We knew what it was. Not a lot of traffic coming up 85. So when we pulled in, saw it, and it really wasn't much. It really wasn't much like from the outside. It wasn't. You could put a lot out with one hose line, and I just remember thinking, all right, this will be fairly quick. We had fires before, several fires before, where it was a little bit more complicated. Some of them are house, some of them are RVs or fifth wheels, kind of like this one was. So we get there, pull out. It's just, I'm going to put the fire out, right? Throw my pack, come around the corner, pull the line off the truck, flake it all out. And as I'm looking at that, I remember I seen one of our chiefs who had already arrived on scene, was kind of walking out there. And the really only exposure was his vehicle that was parked right next to the trailer. So there was that exposure aspect to that. There was a guy walking around, but he never said whether or not this was his trailer or not. And then there was just concerns of, I remember somebody yelling to Engineer Marty that there was propane tanks underneath. So they kind of threw that all out there all at once. And so as chief's going to try to figure out, well, can we move the vehicle out of the way in case this thing keeps going? At least we could do that stuff. I open up the door to the trailer, and it's got smoke at the very top of the ceiling. You can see where the fire is at. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go in there and just look real quick, but I'm not going towards the fire. I could see all the way over to the corner right there. I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to go in there and grab, just like do a sweep real quick, and then come back out. But the door was so light, because you just go up those steps, light door, it kept shutting. So then the line got charged, I bled it, and I stuck the line in the door to hold the door open because I couldn't get a crate or nothing to keep it open. All this is increasing the fire, right? This is poor understanding of fire dynamics, right? So I have the door open now. I go in there. As soon as I walk in, you could kind of feel the heat, but it wasn't anything like outside of bounds. I didn't plan on spending a lot of time in there anyways, but I did notice that the floor, the couch, cabinets that weren't directly impinged by the fire were starting to off gas, right? I remember the carpet being sticky, right, where I was at when I first walked in. The fire was in the corner towards the back of the RV. So I go, you know what? I can see all that because I can see clear visibility smoke. I'm going to go to the front of the trailer. I'm just looking for, like I call a big ticket item, looking for a body. I'm just going to sweep. So I literally walked to the front, the little hallway, swept my arm across the bed. They had the little bathroom doors. I literally just opened up the door, put my foot in the door, little kick of the door, and on my way out, I just felt this rush of like wind, of pressure. And then everything got obviously black, which was already kind of dark and black anyways because I was at the front of the trailer. It was a dead end, so it was already circulating. But I felt the rush, and then I could see the glow. I could see that there was a glow. So it felt like a curtain, like when I was trying to exit that small area. And that curtain was the fire. So what it did is it all flashed at the same time, and it pushed and kicked my nozzle out. Because that was the only entrance and exit right there, right? So I pushed, kicked my nozzle out. And so I'm thinking, that doesn't seem right. Now I think all this from start till I got out was maybe, I think it was 6 or 9 seconds. So I see this curtain. I'm thinking, all right, I am right here. I know there's this fire curtain, like right at the entrance of the door from where you go down the hallway. I'm thinking, all right, I got to go left. I know I need to go left right here. That's where I need to get out, right? Well, I think naturally I didn't want to go through that to get out, or I misjudged a little bit. So I ended up taking like 3 steps instead of 2 steps and making a left. And I ran into like the cabinets that are lined on the inside by the living room space area. And the door was kind of just on my left side. So as I'm facing that south side, the door is on my left side. So I'm kind of sitting there and I'm running through stuff in my head, and it's like I could feel that it's hot. I could still kind of see a little bit of a glow where the things that are not on fire. So I mean, you have carpet, but you can see everything's on fire. And in my head, I'm thinking, all right, this is bad. I'm stuck, right? I'm not sure where the door is at, but I know I don't have my line, and it's getting hot in here, right? So as I'm processing this stuff, I start going back to the academy, and it says, hey, stay calm and try to key your mic. You know what I mean? So I go to try to key my mic for a mayday. And then as soon as I go to press that button for the mayday, my hands were so burned that when I keyed it, I took my hand off of it. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to key my mic for the mayday. So I'm like, oh, they tell you in the academy, calm down. You're going to be all right. Like this. So I was like, all right, calm down, breathe. You're going to be all right. And as soon as that said, you're going to be all right, I go, fuck that. I'm burning. I got to get out of here. I fucking started panicking. I was like, this is it. If I'm going out fighting because I am hurting. I got to get the fuck out of here, right? So then I ramped back up. So that whole calmness thing was all great in theory, but it didn't work in this case. It was in and out real quick, right? I thought about it. So I go, you know what? I know the door was over here. So I started smacking the cabinet until I got to the point where I was able to smack the door open, and I came out, and I remember getting straight streamed by my engineer and almost knocked me over, and I was so pissed. I remember putting my hands up like, man, what the fuck? Like, you just hit me with the nausea, almost knocked me over, right? I didn't know what I.
Do you not know that I am burning up over here?
Well, it wasn't that. I didn't feel like it was burned because of all the adrenaline. It was. Yeah. I just got a shot, like somebody pushed me when I walked out. I was like, the last thing I wanted to do is come out of these little light stairs after being in there and being stuck, and somebody pushed me over, like almost pushed me over. And so that's what I felt like. And then I heard the traffic, I heard all that stuff kick in. That's when Chief Costello called for the emergency traffic and tones, and that was when I exited.
Yeah. All right, hold on right there. So, Stu, you were staring at this door when last we spoke.
Right.
And you're like, there's a nozzle and where's my firefighter?
Right.
So what are you thinking at that point?
When he came out?
Well, I'm assuming he came out. You kind of had that.
Yeah, so he comes out. He's got flames on him. So instantly I wanted to put him out. So the hose was looped like towards me. So I reached down and I grabbed the hose to yank the nozzle towards me as I'm moving towards him. And about that time, Marty saw him at the same time. So Marty and I are running towards the nozzle. Marty gets it and put him out. And so Chief Eggerman was there. And Marty and Eggerman started to try and undo his clothes. I remember seeing his mask. When he first came out, he shook his gloves off. And you could see his hands were burnt. Not real well. But it was like, this is going to be bad. Because just looking at his gear, I was expecting third-degree burns. I mean, it looked bad. And so when he pulled his mask off, those weird thoughts that go through your head, it's like, oh, he's not that bad. He looked normal. Yeah. And so I didn't have the sense of urgency as much. But his equipment was so hot that they couldn't get his off. So I had my gloves on. So I started unbuttoning his coat and getting him out of his gear. And then Carmen had arrived on scene and he took over treatment. He established treatment on his own. Basically radioed command, said, I'll be treatment. And he came and got Marcus and off they went. So I really, at that point, I'm standing there like, okay, now what? Trailer's still on fire. Then I look and I see the motorhome next to it. The exposure, now it's starting to smoke. And so I grabbed the nozzle and tried to put it out, but then we lost water pressure. So the pump on the engine had failed.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? In that you have this Mayday event and every time stops for a moment, right? Marcus, it took you, I'm not sure exactly how long, but several minutes to describe something that probably took seconds.
Yeah.
Right.
It was seconds.
Yeah. And it's amazing how I bring that up because it's remarkable how quickly it goes from being I can see everything to a flashover, right? And when we understand modern fire dynamics, right, like that stuff is happening faster and faster. It used to take several minutes for a flashover to occur in modern fire environments. Now with the small electrical devices, et cetera, things are flashing inside of seconds for a room to flash over because of the gases and the explosiveness of it and the heat release rate of those gases. It's profound changes in our operational context. So I think it's fascinating. And when you're in the middle of a difficult event like that, it's amazing the thoughts that you have because time slows down.
It does.
Right? Yeah. It's quite amazing. But then, boom, firefight's still got to happen. Like we have these events happening and yet there's still an operational need that has to be fulfilled. It's crazy. So Marcus, you get swept away. You're headed to the hospital. How's that? What happened? How much pain were you in? What were you feeling like at that point?
So initially, initially because there was some major access issues going into it. So there's huge access issue where we parked because where the trailer was at, and it was one way in. So access, everybody bottlenecked, trying to get lines in. So when the pump broke, now you have people bottled up trying to get us water, tankers in the way, people. So I was kind of walked to the side, but an ambo couldn't get in. Right, so we're trying to figure out to get an ambo in to move apparatus, and they had a helicopter there because they flew me over to county. So the helicopter, so they landed a helicopter in the field that was nearby, and then they were able to get me in an ambo. And I remember McKenzie, the chief Hess now, was treating me, so they got some IV started, and then the helicopter team, they gave me a bunch of stuff right before we took off.
A bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember being in a helicopter. I remember being super foggy, you know what I mean, about it. We got to county. And so by the time I'm loading in a helicopter and I'm sitting in the back of the ambo, all that adrenaline wore off, and I could see, I could feel it. And everything that places where I didn't know I had gotten burned, everything started getting tight, like rubbery, you know what I mean? So I was like, ooh, I must have got burned there. So everything started to kind of
So let's talk about where did you get burned?
So the hands got the worst of it. Hands got the second and third degree burns. So that was the bulk of it. The back of my arm got a lot of it, my ear. And then I have one of the biggest burns in my butt, which was the running joke in the hospital because people were like, hey,
Butts are funny.
no, it was not even just that. I mean, for me, I would consider, I had a pretty good
Larger than average.
Larger than average,
Yes.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? There was a lot of power stored in there. And so
Yes.
people would come to the hospital and they were like, hey, I heard you got burned like 80% of your body. And I was like, I'm looking at them in the hospital, not bandaged up and stuff. And I'm like,
What are you talking about?
80%. They're like, yeah, 80%. So you got burned on your butt, didn't you? I was like, oh, gosh, you guys. And then they would come do it, and I'd let them tell the joke to make them feel better because everybody wants to be a comedian.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah. So
That's how we deal with grief.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had one of my worst ones actually on my butt. And then my hands by far, my arms were second, hands second, third, my butt second, almost third, ears second.
Okay, I have to pry a little bit. When you say that, like a butt cheek, or like, was it more invasive than that? Like, how bad was it?
I would say like it's on the butt cheek, but it's probably like 90% of my butt, like a spot this big.
Oh,
the part where it was hard to even like sit on it or do anything. Like
Yeah.
they had to bandage it, they had to go in and clean it up.
Yeah.
So once I got to the hospital, there was a bunch of Phoenix people actually there, member service people there to greet me. Went right into the room. I'll tell you about that part, and you can tell me how Alicia was notified, or I won't.
I had notified her.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my wife was notified, and then pretty much just started cleaning me up, which the process of being burned and being cleaned up is awful.
Yeah.
It is so painful, and they start cutting things off and like cutting skins off and the dead stuff off, and they call it showers or baths, but it's nothing like a shower bath when they're debriding things. So it's just kind of crappy. It really, really hurt a lot.
What kind of meds are you on for that kind of stuff?
Oh, they give you pretty much anything you want for the pain meds, anything that's going to knock it. So they mixture a bunch of different things, and nausea medication, because with the pain and the medication, it makes you nauseous, right?
Yeah.
So I remember several times having to be in the shower, which is like a warm, hot shower, and they're in there and you're naked and they're cleaning. They're using like a spatula to kind of scrape off old tissue and just vomiting on the ground, but giving pain meds because you need the pain meds to go through it. But I'm in so much pain, even with the meds in the shower and just everything, just vomiting while they're cleaning me up in the shower, right? Just so they could rebandage me every little bit. So
Is that like an everyday thing, multiple times a day, or every other day, or how often?
Yeah, no, it was every day. We had to do it. Initially, it was a couple times a day, and then it was just every day. I had to get it done. And then I had 2 surgeries, which those are the easiest ones because they just put me out, did the surgery, and I ended up getting a graft in my hand, which it took from my thigh area because that wasn't healing properly. And that one's kind of down to the bone on that one. So, yeah, all that kind of stuff was.
Yeah. So how long did you end up being in the hospital?
3-4 weeks.
I thought it was 4 weeks.
Yeah, about 4 weeks in the hospital, which was being in the hospital was county did an amazing job of taking care of me. They did an amazing job, but it was just very difficult because people wanted to come see me, but you're in the burn unit, so there's always those restrictions.
Yeah.
There are a lot of kids that got burned, and that's awful. So when they had their showers, my room happened to be next to the shower, so that was awful to hear them because obviously it wasn't pleasant for these little girls that they rolled in a little red wagon in there to do this stuff and try to make them 8 years old with severe burns.
Yeah.
That was very difficult. And then you hear the news and you hear everybody kind of ramping everything up and blowing it into something, and I didn't like that because it wasn't the truth. The truth.
What was the story that was being told?
That I was like in critical condition or something, and I was not. It dramatized my injuries. Mm-hmm. The situation was one thing, but the injuries, they didn't really have an accurate portrayal. So it made it sound like I was critical, right? But they didn't get that information from me, and I'm sure they didn't get it from the doctors. So, my family's a little distraught because they heard most of it from the news.
Right.
News got a hold of it so quick, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So there was a lot.
Yeah, that's an important part. Like information has to be controlled. But they're listening to radios and they're showing up on scene, and we have to protect the integrity of the information for our folks because there's consequences to that, right? You have family across the country who may not be able to get your wife or get somebody who has real-time information on the hook, and then all they hear is, Buckeye Firefighter gets burned, goes to the hospital, and they're like, wait, I know a guy. That's my guy. I have family, or whatever it is, right? And they tell themselves a story, and it gets really bad. And it's tough. We got to make sure we're careful with that information. So this horrible experience, you're still a firefighter, so clearly it didn't dissuade you from continuing your career. But these events are only important to us if we can learn something from them. If we continue to make the same, mistakes, we don't learn about fire dynamics, we continue to repeat these behaviors, we hurt more people. We used to joke around all the time when we talk about the fact that, there's no fires that are left unburning. Like, we put fires out, like they go out. There's not a single fire in the valley right now that's left just unburned and we can't get our hands wrapped around it. Mm-hmm. So we overpower them with resources. We overwhelm them with, speed of action and, our response, etc. And sometimes, and we oftentimes get very lucky in these circumstances and, get these fires put out. So my question is after this event, as you guys are reflecting on this, both of you at different points in your careers and different responsibilities as a senior firefighter, as a captain, what lessons did you learn in the immediate aftermath? You're like, okay, 2009, this went down. I am changing this. And then over the years, as you've reflected on this event, what things have changed for you?
Well, I think for me as a company officer, probably the most immediate thing was just the communication. Because we had talked, we had trained numerous times on, and like Marcus said, we had fires and stuff. So at the time, I felt like we pretty much understood. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of discussion that needed to take place prior to getting to a fire. From that point on, immediately, the first thing I changed was anybody who was on my truck, I made sure they knew they weren't entering anything without me being right next to them. I didn't care how much experience they had. It didn't matter. That hose and that firefighter would not make an entry without me. That was the immediate thing. I think the other thing was the communication. Making sure that everybody knew on the way to the fire what the expectation was, who was doing what, where everybody was going, what the plan was, as best you can make heading to a fire. Obviously you don't know everything until you get there, but the communication side of it, just making sure everybody was on board, on the same page before we got off the truck. So those were probably the two most crucial things for me that were immediate.
Yeah. What about you, Marcus?
Oh, there was a lot. There was a lot that I learned from that in reflection. I mean, there's a ton. So I would say to start off is a better understanding about why things are in place. That's including policy, procedures, equipment. You kind of understanding. You just not going with the flow and just saying, "Oh, I got this because it's supposed to do this," right? You have to really understand it. And I think part of what helped me not to receive less burns is that at the time I actually had on my uniform that I'm supposed to have on. So usually we go out. Marty is our guy that wants to work out all the time. He's running around here. And
Don't say.
Yeah, he's over here working out. He's got like 2% body fat and everything. And so me, I was a little heavier, and I'm like, you know what, this is I don't have that type of build, you know what I mean? So then we would go out and running things, and I have, thighs rubbing against each other, so I would have to wear my spandex, and because if not, it would be terrible. Yeah, it would be terrible, right? So I'm like, I usually had on some type of spandex and other things, and I remember being told once, well, if you have any of that polyester stuff on and you get into an incident where it's super hot and it's polyester and you're screwed either way. Yeah. Right. Like, so it's not going to matter whether or not you have. Well, in this particular day, I had all 100% cotton underwear on. I had my uniform pants on, all of that, in which the underwear and the pants didn't really have any damage to them, but yet I had a big amount of damage to my butt. So it did not melt on my skin. Now, being younger, the last thing I want to do is have polyester melt on my skin. So I was taking that thermal salt. I was in a hot environment, and I was able to actually survive that environment, right, and reduce the amount of burns because I wore the right stuff, which was 100% cotton, right? There's a reason why we wear 100% cotton, and that's why it's supported for that melting factor, right? So that was huge. The other part is I had a brand new jacket that I had not worn yet. So the shift before, because I'd been teaching at the college and training, I had a rip in my jacket. Now then, in 2009, I just wanted it to be comfortable. It was comfortable. We didn't have the understanding of cancer and decon stuff, so it's been used. It was comfortable. I had it. My pants, they were old, but my jacket was brand new, and it was actually probably bigger than I would have liked it. But it hadn't been. I got at the end of last shift, and this happened at 9 o'clock in the morning, the shift the next day. So it was a brand new jacket that I had. So that also limited my amount of injuries as well. But it tore through that jacket within a minimal amount of time. So definitely wearing the right PPE was good. I had it all on correctly, which was good. I definitely understand about there's always a weak spot in your gear. In this case, my gloves were my weak spot. Right? Because you either get gloves that have good dexterity or you get the gloves that are like oven mitts and you can't feel and do anything. So there's a balance to that one. But that was just a weak spot in my gear. Pulling up, the biggest thing was my arrogance, right? My ego. That was the biggest thing by far because I was like, I felt comfortable with it, but not understanding why I was doing it, except for the fact that I felt good when I did it. I enjoyed what I was doing, felt like I was good with what I was doing about it, but I didn't know why I was doing it. I was just doing it just to fucking go to work, right? It was just like, all right, let's go to work. That's it. We're there to put the fire out. Okay, but didn't understand the risk management profile. I had been teaching flashover stuff, but really didn't understand what it looked like, especially when you're in the container, right? Although if you read anything about it and you really study it, it tells you exactly what I saw.
Yeah.
But mostly I think Esh and Marty had the same idea about what it was and what we need to do as the risk. I could have just put the fire out and I still could have did a search. If I'd have put the fire out, I still would have been able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. The tactics would have been a little different, but still would have met the objective. But there was just this linear thought, this one-way thought of, well, you have to do this and you have to search first and then you have to put the fire out, or you have two people maybe doing it at the same time. And I didn't really understand it, but risk management profile was huge for me on that one. Not understanding that. And then what the collateral damage that it does was big. I mean, I was very upset for months, and Esh and I got to talk about it, how I was disappointing him, right? Because he had these expectations. I wanted him to rely on me as a trustworthy person, make decisions. I didn't want that taken away. And I was like, well, I feel like I just lost that because what I should have done, right? And the feedback that I felt that he received, more than probably just me, which I didn't agree with, was based off of was kind of induced by me. It felt like
the result of your actions.
Yeah, it was my actions when his thought process was right, but my lack of understanding or communication or question asking, my ego was driving because you can outwork somebody from the front seat. Like if I get off the truck and start moving, there's not much. He was giving an on-scene report, and I was already off the truck with the line pulled. So you can say what you want, but if somebody still doesn't choose to follow through with that or not pay attention as a firefighter who has the autonomy to say, this is your job, do your job, then you end up with issues. So I didn't really like that feedback, so that bothered me a little bit. My wife at the time was getting feedback, negative feedback, asking all these questions because everybody wants to Monday morning quarterback it. Everybody wants to say, why would you do that? Everybody wants to say, I wouldn't do anything like that. So that's also a very big challenge. And probably one of the biggest challenges that nobody talks about is that I thought for sure that I was not going to be married the entire time. The impact that it had on my wife and my family, it was like, what are you risking? Why are you doing this? Because my family says, well, you're being selfish. I'm like, that's not what I hear in the movies. I'm not being selfish. I'm a freaking hero. Just ask somebody, right? I'm like, come on now. Like you get free meals, get discounts because we're heroes. Yeah. No, but there's a difference between understanding and being able to be a good listener and perspective. And the perspective was, we don't want you to go away. Yeah. Your kids don't want you to leave. Your kids want you around. So you're going to go save somebody else, and we're going to lose you,
right? Because
you enjoy your job. It's a selfish thing, right? So it took a year to move past that, where I didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to talk about it, but I thought for sure that was the end of my relationship. And that came because I didn't want to talk about it. It wasn't until I actually talked about it and I expressed to her that I still feel nervous. I'm still paying attention. Like everything is heightened now when I'm on calls. And I got back on the truck. I was still a little sensitive to some fire, but everything I was aware of, like what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And so my actions were deliberate. I was still aggressive, but my actions were very, like, I thought about it as well. It wasn't such a just run in there and do it because you're supposed to pull the line, put the fire out, pull the line, put the fire out, pull the line, or somebody pulls the line and you're supposed to search. There was understanding while I was doing this action of pulling the line or putting the fire out. What am I doing? What happens if I don't do it? What could hurt or kill me, right? So that really expanded my thought process, my view, my understanding of the job, my understanding of fire behavior. But not talking to my wife about it or expressing that I still feel nervous about things. I'm still aware of how quickly things can change, right? That was what turned the corner, at least in that relationship, right, with it. So then I needed to talk about it for a long time. I mean, it took about a year to talk about it. And this came off of a year. This came a year after I had one of my close friends, George Cortez, who was a Phoenix police officer who had just got killed in line of duty. And we spent the entire week going over that funeral and with his wife, and it was terrible. And I remember her saying, I don't want anything to happen. And my words were, I understand. I don't want that to happen either, but I'm good. We've been training. I got a great crew. That's what I said. Famous last words. And almost less than a year later, then I get injured, and she hears I'm getting flown to the hospital, and she knows what that means. And so, there's no absolutes. There's no guarantees. You have to make the best decisions, but it comes with time. But you got to let your ego go, man. You got to say, I just don't know what I don't know. Ask questions, but why are you doing what you're doing? Like, what is the risk really? Because the risk at 18 years now, although I feel like I've taken more risk on being in our hazmat team, I've taken some different risk on, so it's still risky. I'm very much aware of that stuff. But what are you really risking for what, right? Like, what are you didn't cause the problem. We need to try to fix it the best way possible, but I became part of the problem there.
Yeah.
Could have put the fire out and would have been all right, but I became part of the problem that actually impacted more people than just the incident.
So let's talk about that for a second. We talk about risk, and I would submit to you that there is a mandate from our community, right, which is that we will put ourselves in harm's way to rip them from the clutches of death, for lack of a better way to say it, right? That's our job. So how do we do that in a way that manages risk but allows us to be aggressive and put ourselves in places that are difficult and dangerous?
From my end, so I'm still in the back seat. Having talks with my captain, the crew, about what the boundaries and expectations are. Like, what are we going to go and do? That's huge because we work in teams, so I don't have to make that decision. I don't have to say this is what it looks like, right? And the environments are dynamic. So the big thing is, if it's somebody that's a savable life, like our risk management, it's savable life. Now the question is, what is a savable life? And those are all questions that you have to ask. You got to be ruthlessly curious in order to be successful and survive in this job without getting cancer, without having any heart issues, with your family stuff, with just calls you might see. You have to be curious about asking these questions about how you can overcome something, how we might approach it, and what your boundaries are to yourself. So, I think that's the biggest thing, is asking enough questions about what it is you're going to, saying, what if this would happen, what I would do in your head, and then asking that collaboratively with other people to help you work through what you would do in the process if you can't physically, actively train on doing that, because most situations are not how we usually train on. So you can visualize that stuff. So I think you just got to ask questions about it. If you can think of it, it probably can happen, right? We don't want to put that past anybody, but think about it, collaborate, use your crew and say, what will we do in this situation? Continue to build on it that way, because at least you'll get a mental rep at what you might do, and you might even find some innovative solutions with the conversation with your team.
I like that. What about for you, Stu?
I think it's one of those things that obviously the fire service has come a long way as far as information, technology, that sort of thing, and I think it's a matter of using that technology to make the decisions, the best decision you can. I think it used to be, you even know, before we had MCTs and stuff, you just you got the address, a little bit of information, and you had to kind of decide what you were going to do on the way. Now we have almost information overload, where you're a company officer and you got probably more information than you can get through before you even get there. So I think it's a matter of taking all that information and making an informed decision rather than just a decision.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to what Marcus was saying as far as being educated. I think that today's firefighter needs to be more educated, have a better education in the fire dynamics, in flow paths and things like that, because it has changed so more dramatically with time, the lack of time as far as when you get there. So it's finding that balance. I think there's sometimes where you stand back and you go, there may be someone in there, but there's no way they're survived. We all know, we've seen those fires where you look at them and go, there's no way. I can't even survive in there with my gear on.
Yeah.
And being able to make that decision to stay out. And that's where I think you save. That's the risk. That's the risk part. I'm not going to risk myself for something that I can't do anything about.
Yeah.
And having the strength to do that. I think sometimes people just don't have that. They're like, I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is that our ability to manage risk is directly correlated to our knowledge, skills, and abilities. Mm-hmm. And that is a matter, you just touched on it, right? It's education, it's training, it's understanding, it's gathering intel and understanding the variables on the fireground. That's how you make calculated decisions. Mm-hmm. You have to have all that information that you've studied and practiced and gotten sets and reps on. You have to understand fire dynamics and know what happens when you open the door. And, when you feed it a little bit of oxygen, how it's going to change the dynamic of that environment. Small, medium, and large size structures, how's it going to change? You have to know the variables and size them up as you're gathering intel and information on the way to the incident. And the beautiful thing about it is that we oftentimes put that on the captain, but everybody on the fireground, this is evidence here, gets a vote, right? Yeah. Like they're going to act and do things. And so how do we, as company officers, we have to provide leadership. And you talked about communicating with your crew and making sure they understand what the plan is going in, because your view from the windshield is different from their view in the back seat, right. And based on their level of experience, right? The vision that they have for what an incident looks like as a new guy versus a guy who's got 20 some years or 18 years or however many in between, right? Your field of vision has changed, right? We talk about looking through a straw when you're just a booter, right? Well, that expands and now you see the whole thing and you don't even have to think about it. You just know it implicitly, right? Because of your exposure and experience, your KSAs. So
I think one thing to add real quick too, one of the things that kind of changed my perspective, and it goes along with what Marcus was saying, Marcus, he put the word arrogant on it. I don't know if it was so much that as just.
It's his words.
I know, right? I know. But I think for me it was more kind of taking things for granted or not giving that fire its due respect, so to speak.
Yeah.
We roll up and it's a fifth wheel trailer. Yeah. We've been in house fires. This is nothing.
Yeah.
And so I think that was an eye opener for me, that even in the smallest of fires, my firefighter gets burned.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of responsibility with that that I carry that with me and have carried it with me my whole career. And I've tried to balance that with making sure that from this point forward, I'm not going to take any fire for granted. I don't care if it's a dumpster fire. We're going to be cautious and we're going to go into this with a degree of hesitation.
Pessimism.
So that we're not overly confident about what we're doing and who we are and our capabilities.
Yeah. Smart.
And to that, I think right now what I'm using, because at least in Phoenix, there is a lot of young guys that come in, so they come through, and so they're newer techs, they're younger firefighters. So I guess I would say now that I'm considered maybe a more senior firefighter, which I still don't feel that way because there's so much information, right? The question I ask myself is, because it does base off of your level of experience, wisdom, what you studied, the feedback you've gotten from calls, that I say, well, I would go in there and do that. So then the question I said, well, but would I take that person with me? And that person's got a family, and the person's got that one. So if I would do it, but I wouldn't take that person with me, then I shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things. It's one of the measurements I have. Either I tell to another firefighter who's going to say, yes, I'm going to do that because I don't want to look bad. I'm worried about my ego. It changes with time and wisdom, and you're around the right group of people. They'll express to you that it is your thought process is young, and you'll kind of mature out of that stuff. But as a senior guy, I look at that and I say, okay, would you do that? And I can ask them, and they'll say yes. I go, okay, would you take me with you? And then be able to explain that to my wife and kids, that you took me into that one and you made a mistake. Because if you're not going to take me in, then you shouldn't go. So I use that a lot. I look at that a lot when I'm going through it. I'm like, if I wouldn't bring anybody, if I'm not going to go in there with my crew or with me, then why do I need to do it by myself? Who am I trying to prove to?
Yeah.
Right? What
capabilities do I have that make me able to do that, right? A long time ago I was taught that we have to question Are we in the right place for doing the right things for the right reasons? And when we're going into a fire, that's an incredibly important assessment we have to make, right? And can we accomplish what we think we can accomplish? Not because of our heroism, but because we've made a thoughtful calculation about the conditions, the structure, the development of the fire, et cetera, where it's going, the resources we're bringing with us, right? Like all these, whether it be people or hose lines, the right hose line size and selection, et cetera, all super important variables. Mm-hmm. So let me pull this to a close. What are the final lessons that you've carried with you? Like you just say, this is the one thing that I want everyone to understand, and I've taken with me throughout the course of my career ever since this event.
I don't know if you can narrow it down to one, but I think there's a couple things out of it that stand out to me. One, you can't control everything. You can prepare as best you can, but we're people, right? And that's the business we're in. Is even with us, we're dealing with people in and of ourselves. So you can't control everything. But the other one is be as prepared as you can be. Don't take things for granted like education. Don't take things for granted like, the training. Don't blow these things off because they're there for a reason. And typically it's because someone else got hurt. So in New York, I was there last year at their training academy, and one of their sayings is the policies or procedures manual is written in blood because something's centered around somebody getting hurt. And so I think that's the thing, just especially if you're looking at younger firefighters coming up or even company officers, learn as much as you can, take every opportunity to take it in because it's there for a reason. And don't blow it off. And then really just communicate. Make sure that you're communicating on a regular basis with your crews. So, and then even for firefighters, ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah. What about you, Marcus?
I mean, he said it pretty well. Like, you have to ask questions, but I think it's mostly the greatest work can be done, at least from a firefighter perspective, is on yourself. So asking yourself these questions: what am I willing to do? Would I willing to die for that? If I go to a house fire and I look and there's nobody inside, am I willing to die for that? If I go to a vehicle fire and the vehicle's on fire, am I willing to die for that one? Right? Am I willing to get hurt? What would it feel like to get hurt? If you ask those questions in yourself to yourself about those situations that you're going to be in, it does help you make decisions on your risk when you get there. And if you're really struggling with your decisions or what you would do, then once again, you ask for help, ask your crew for feedback. But if you know in your head you're going in there that I am not going to get hurt with a car fire, right? Because of tires and front bumpers. We had a front bumper remember that blew off? Oh, yeah. Or traffic. There's all kinds of stuff, right? I'm not getting hurt for this vehicle fire. You have a boundary in place which puts your safety net in place. You say, I'm not risking that. So you're heightened and you're aware of those things that could harm you. So when you make your decision's based off of some thought, some understanding of where you're at with things, right? So before you get there, that person needs to have their boundaries and expectations of like, listen, if I see this and it's fully involved and I can't get to that thing, that's not survivable. So then would I become part of that problem? Would I be hurt or killed for a house that's not mine that insurance is probably going to rebuild? Unless you're in LA, but maybe I don't know if I said it too soon. So yes, I think that's it. You got to ask your questions for yourself too, because once you answer those questions there, you can also answer them when you go home personally as you're trying to understand the risk, your justification, your decision-making. It's all decision-making, but you got to run those by your personal self, create those boundaries, and use your team and crews to help you navigate and move through.
One other thing I wanted to add too, and I think there's a lot of times, and I think this is kind of throughout the fire services, when you're training, it's always life or death, right? Would you die for that? Would you be willing to risk your life for that? And I think sometimes the whole funeral thing kind of, well, if I die, I die. I'll be a hero. I'm a hero, right? But I think sometimes we have to ask ourselves, would I be willing to lose my ability to walk for that? Not that you're dead, but you take away a part of your life. And there's a Detroit firefighter. He was 28, something like that. And he had a wall fall on him. Brick wall came down. He was in the collapse zone. Just the night before he was skiing, or day before he was skiing, came on shift, picked up a shift, got a call. That very morning, he was a paraplegic. Now he's having to learn how to, one, not be a firefighter, but now what's his value in life, in this world, and he's having to try and learn how to do everything differently now with a house that has to be wheelchair accessible. He has to drive. So I think those are things that we really need to, am I willing to change my life for this? And,
well, and anymore, the threat is, cancer. It's these insidious things that will kill you over time, right? So taking care of your PPE and making sure it's clean, like those are the daily things that you can do to stay healthy and keep yourself, have longevity in your life and enjoy your retirement. Well, let me just say, I really appreciate your willingness to share the mistakes and the errors, and because we as a body of professionals grow and learn when we reflect on some of the errors. This is a dynamic job. We're going to make mistakes. I had a boss tell me once, I have not been on a single fire that went perfect, right? Every fire has anomalies and variables, and we make mistakes, and we grow when we reflect on those mistakes. And I appreciate your willingness to share the things that you guys learned so that other firefighters who are listening to this can take those lessons, weave it into their daily operations, try to make changes for themselves so that maybe one day they can, have that trailer fire and be like, ooh, watch that door, maintain that door closure, bring the nozzle with me, get water on this fire from appropriate distance, manage the environment and make better decisions, and so I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Reed. Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, folks. That's all we have for today. Thank you, Stu. Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate you guys. If you're enjoying this podcast, get on over to Apple Podcasts, rate and review the podcast. That puts it up on people's feeds, gets it pipelined into the internets, and that's how we find new people to share this message and spread and gain more followers, etc. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out at raingray@firegroundfitness.com. Now, last thing, you listen to Marcus, you listen to Stu. Take the lessons that they've shared today. Improve, develop, grow your KSAs, your knowledge, skills, and abilities. This is what keeps you safe on the fireground. Your ability to operate by sizing up, understanding the environment, the context that you're operating in. This is what keeps you safe on the fireground. You want to be an aggressive firefighter? Know what the fuck you're doing on the fireground. Make good decisions. Operate effectively, rapidly, and with violence of action. Now, go on out there. Get some.